Okay, I have a lot of updates. Some of them are recent, some of them are less recent. So I didn't post any videos in June, and I haven't really been talking about what I've been reading in July, so I figured I'd kind of just make this video, talk about everything I've been reading. Before reading rush time, I should just put out there everything that already exists in my reading life so I don't forget about it when I go through reading rush and come back. So that's this video. So I'm going to talk about what I read in June, what I read in July, and what I'm currently in the middle of. We're going to make this quick. Let's start. Book 1, A Little Life. What's this book about? It's sad. It's a sad book. That's kind of more or less all I need to say, to be completely honest. But I will say more. It's a book about 4 best friends who meet in college and their lives together. And it's incredible, and it's a really interesting character study, and it's about autonomy and the way in which having autonomy taken away from you impacts you, and also about how trauma impacts you, and about flawed people with real grief facing real trauma and suffering a lot. Just a lot of suffering. A lot of suffering. I cannot stress that enough. A lot of suffering. This book was excellent. I thought it was super well written. I thought it was beautiful. It caused the emotions the author clearly wanted to cause. That being said, by the end, I was frustrated because it felt like Yanagihara was just piling on more sad shit to make me feel sadder, and it worked. However, it started to take me out of the story because it was just so unrealistic by that point. I started to empathize with the character less than I did when it felt like it could be a real person. So I'd give it a reluctant 5 stars. Reluctant because it was so clearly designed just to make people suffer, and I don't love that. However, it worked, so I can't be that angry about it. Next book, The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This book was fine. It's a book about this woman who's from Vietnam, and she gets offered this rich Vietnamese lady who lives in America to come and marry her son, basically. And so she comes to America, and she lives with him, and her mom wants him to marry her, but he doesn't want to marry her, and he has Asperger's, and it's a love story, and it was fine. It was attraction, it wasn't love. It was kind of a filler book that I read because I needed something light and fluffy after A Little Life, and it served its purpose, but it wasn't anything that I'd read again. So, I don't know, maybe like 2.5 stars. Not that it was bad or anything, it just wasn't very memorable. Okay, next. Over the course of June and July, half in June, half in July, I read the entirety of the Raven cycle. So that's The Raven Boys, The Dream Thieves, Blue Lily Lily Blue, and The Raven King, all by Maggie Stiefvater. I liked these books, and I'd heard a lot of good things about them, both from people in my life and booktubers that I follow, so I was really curious to read them, and I definitely enjoyed them. The plot was interesting, the magic was fun, the characters were really fun to watch interact with each other. That being said, how do I describe this? The book felt... Okay. So the book felt like a pom-pom in that there was this core, really interesting concept and story and magic, and then all of these little strings coming off of it. And I think I just wish the book had fewer and longer strings. Like, the amount of yarn could have been the same and I would have been happy, but I wish each little thing was chosen more carefully and expanded upon more. For example, there's some romantic relationships that I thought were super cute. I just wish that there was more page time with those characters together, just each other, developing their relationship, because it felt a little bit too shallow. That's how I feel. It felt like it was a mile-long pool that was an inch deep, and I wish it was just a little bit of a smaller pool and it was a little bit deeper. But also that might just be YA. It's been a while since I read YA, and I think adult fantasy, honestly, has made me used to thousands and thousands of pages of character development and story, and so I think Maggie Stiefvater did a great job of fitting this much story into this small an amount. It's like a little over 1,000 pages total, I want to say. I would have liked it if the page allocations had been allocated to fewer storylines more deeply. Overall, I'd give the entire series a 3-star, but I'd say the first book was a 3.5 to 4-star. Second book was also 3.5 to 4-star. Third book was maybe 2.5 to 3-star. And fourth book was 3 to 3.5 star. So overall, not bad at all. Next, I read My Dog Vanessa, and this book was fucking terrifying. It follows this 15-year-old girl in boarding school as she enters a relationship with her 42-year-old professor, and it also follows the same girl, Vanessa, 15 years later when she's an adult and kind of dealing with the repercussions of the damage that relationship did on her, but not really realizing that that's what she's dealing with, and coming to the realization that the relationship was imbalanced and that she was taken advantage of, and that she has misremembered and misrepresented what this relationship was in her head. God, this book was terrifying. I think what was really scary was the ways in which the 42-year-old professor would say things, and they sounded so logical. Like, even though I knew what he was saying was crazy, I'd hear it and be like, wow, I fully understand the logic behind that. And so you can so clearly see the ways in which being so much older than her, being in a position of power over her, being someone who she implicitly trusts, he was able to take advantage of her and groom her and twist the way she thought about their relationship into exactly what he wanted it to be. God, that was just so scary. That made me like, oh, man, I don't know. And there was just all these problematic things, and it was just so sad to watch her believe the really fucked up things that he convinced her to believe. I don't know what else to say about it except you should read it. 5 stars. I very much enjoyed it in there are spiders crawling all over me, creepy, oh my god, this is like emotionally horrific kind of way, if that's your thing. Let's move on to books that I'm in the middle of / about to start. Okay, book number 1. Mistborn, the 3rd one. I believe it's called The Hero of Ages. I started it in March. I read the first 2 books in March, and then the 3rd book has taken me the last 4 months to not complete. It's not a bad book. I am just going really slowly on it for some reason. I don't know why. I think Mistborn is a trilogy written by Brandon Sanderson. It's supposed to be kind of a younger audience than Stormlight Archive, which is a much longer series. But for some reason, I think I always tend to lose speed on the 3rd book, just because you've already read like 2,000 pages and you're like, oh my god, I'm only 2/3 of the way through this thing. And so then it just sort of becomes a slog to get through that 3rd book. Because Oathbringer, I had the same problem with. Even though it was a really good book, I still took way longer to read it than I did to read Way of Kings or Words of Radiance. So the same thing is happening to me with Hero of Ages. Also, I own it, and so like all these library books are coming in, and I feel the need to finish them quickly so I don't lose them. But I own the Hero of Ages, and so I keep just putting it off, and I just need to get to it and read it at some point. I'm like halfway through at this point. I don't even have that much left. I just need to read it. And every time I read it, I enjoy it. I should tell you what this book is about. Okay, so this book takes place in this fantasy world that imagines that the bad guy has won, basically. And it's this team of thieves and ragtag, downtrodden people coming together to try to defeat this overall Lord Ruler. So that's kind of the plot of the 1st book, and then the 2nd and the 3rd book, I don't want to give anything away, but it expands upon that, and this 3rd book is, I can't talk about the 3rd book without spoiling things, so I'm not going to say anything. It's a great book. I'm enjoying it when I read it, and I want to keep reading it when I pick it up, but I just can't help but feel like I'm wasting the time that I have on the books that have a finite amount of time with me. That's where I'm at right now. And the last book that I'm in the middle of right now is The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's a short story collection, and I've been reading it with my mom, actually. We've been sitting down, and after we finished each story, we chat about it a little bit, and it's honestly been a really fun experience. My mom grew up in India, and The Thing Around Your Neck takes place in Nigeria mostly, but also follows some Nigerian American immigrants. And so it was really interesting to hear her take on the stories and the ways in which we differ, and the ways in which her upbringing impacts what she feels, and the things that she's like, oh yeah, that's familiar, that was something that I grew up with as well, versus the places where she's like, oh, what? Is this really how part of the world exists? Also, I think what I really like is that Adichie throws you into the culture of Nigeria and the historical context that every Nigerian would understand, but me coming from a pretty Eurocentric schooling system doesn't really understand, and she doesn't explain it as if her audience would obviously be Eurocentric people. And so I'm learning about history that I never really learned about in school, and I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, just being able to talk about it with my mom, and also being able to learn more about the historical context of the stories she's telling. She covers a really wide range of subjects, which I'm enjoying. No story feels that similar, despite the fact that they all center around the relationship between men and women, and mothers and sons, and Nigeria and America. There's all these really common themes, but the way in which she attacks it in each story is so different, and the context is so different, that it never feels repetitive. At least not yet. I'm about 4 or 5 out of 12 stories in, and I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple of days. And then the last thing I want to talk about is something that I haven't even started yet, but it's due in 3 days back in the library, so I'm hoping to finish it in the next 3 days, so I'll talk about it anyway. And that's Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang. It's a short story collection. I think it's kind of sci-fi, fantasy-ish. One of the stories in there is what the movie Arrival is based on. I have nothing to say about it because I haven't even started it, but I think I'll like it, so we'll see what happens. And that's my update. I'll hopefully be reading a bunch of different crap next week during Reading Rush, which means that I'll have finished things I'm in the middle of, other than Mistborn probably, by then. And other than that, I got nothing else.